So, all right. So welcome everybody to a second installment of some talk time with Peggy Starr. And I'm pleased to have her here. And she looks beautiful today. Thank you for coming, Peggy. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So we kind of move around, in anything that I do, I call it riffing. We just move from one thing to another, and whatever has to be said or needs to be said is said. And so I asked Peggy today where she wanted to start, and she mentioned to me the Seth books. And so I'm going to let her talk and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I started with the SETH books, Jane Roberts' SETH books, back in the 60s. With the book was titled The Education of Oversoul 7.
Okay.
And I was really taken in by it. And at the time, I was really taken over by things in my life. And so once I'd read that book, that was the end of that for me for quite some time.
Okay.
But I stepped into the Castaneda books in the 70s, and that gave it a big new energy. Okay, girl, you're working on waking up. You're working on correcting some behaviors. You're working on seeing life in a whole new way. And I just went from one thing to the next after that. But I want to jump to where I'm at right now. And that is, I found the SETH books again.
We all come around, don't we? Yeah.
So here I am reading The Nature of Personal Reality.
Okay.
And again, I'm just totally taken in by it.
Right.
And I can see from the opening pages of the book that many others of our prominent teachers now were also taken by the SETH books. So what I have in my kitchen right now is kind of a fascinating, colorful rainbow. I've got little cards, each of them a different color. And they're all saying something that's essentially an affirmation of what I would prefer be in my life, and an emptying out of what I don't want in my life.
Right.
And I want that prominently visible. The kitchen is the best place. And colorful.
Well, that's me too.
Exactly.
I'm always in my kitchen. Yeah, I need to do the same thing because there are things that I know I need to do, but I need to be reminded. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it brings you right back where you want to be in the first place.
That's right.
Or like Seth refers to as the deepest values within us, not something that's been programmed from outside, but what comes up from inside.
Oh, that's
so that's where I'm at right now. And what I've noticed is a jump in my energy. As I read this book and as I make those little remarks and hang them on the wall, it seems like I have more energy in the body. I've been painting more, drawing more, and it's woo, woo, woo.
That's excellent. That Kundalini's going up, up, up.
It seems like it also goes in cycles.
True, it does.
When I tend to step aside and pay too much attention to the manifestations of life, I'm not as much centered in on my own deep values.
Yep.
When I'm in that space, there's not as much vitality in the body. True. The vitality comes when I keep focusing on the substance of the journey.
That's wonderful. If we could only continue to do that, but you're right, everything seems to be cyclical. I remember starting out more with astrology and the Casey stuff. And then my brother brought me into Science of Mind. And I used to get these all the time, these little magazines. And so for some reason wanted to go back and get them again. I'm not a churchgoer, but I like the material and I can parse out what it is that works for me. And guess what? It talks about cycles. It talks about becoming aware of what we are manifesting or thinking about that might not even be it's just an old pattern. and we need to get away from it because it isn't maybe even really what we think. It's what we were programmed to think, like you mentioned. So
Well,
that's
exactly.
wonderful.
And Seth speaks to that very issue. I was once in Science of Mind, and I was working to become a minister of that. And I stepped away from that, like I stepped away from everything else. After a while, you begin to create your own out of all of it.
You do.
So anyway, what Seth is saying is keep focusing on the deep inner values and create your own life based upon your own rules that come out of your own deep values.
Amen.
So that is where I'm at, instead of some particular gurus, though I've tasted a lot of them along the way. It's better now to stay focused on the best that comes through.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what's steering my life now, wholeheartedly, is not specifically the Seth books, but how he's guiding you to focus on where you really want to be.
Where you really want to be. Do you, I hope you're not wallowing, but I wonder sometimes, do you wish you had, I'm at the point where, and I'm not wallowing in regret, but I'm at the point where I say to myself, why didn't I do this a little bit earlier? You know, and then I say, well, it doesn't really matter because time is immaterial. You know, we only have now anyway. But sometimes I regret that I hadn't started something or hadn't stuck with something. But I'm a lot like you. I'm what I call a mutt. I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I bring it all together. So I understand exactly.
What, as I understand it, and I resonate with something that Seth says along that line. And actually, everything that we've experienced along the way has contributed in some way to our development.
Oh, yeah.
And so our inner guidance guided us to that experience so that we could filter it through this system.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter which teaching we choose, each person is going to relate to it a little bit differently because their path is a little different.
Absolutely, because we're all unique human beings, but we are connected at the same time. I just hate it when somebody wants to control. You know, there are situations where people want to control a group of people by some means, by fear or intimidation. And I watched those shows about Scientology and what they were doing, and I thought, you know, some of their teachings may have been very interesting, but not a good place to be. Yeah,
that's one path I didn't go.
Good, me either.
I read a lot about it, but I didn't resonate with the better part of it. I just didn't connect with it.
Yep.
And I'm happy with my own path.
Yeah, good.
So again, I feel that we make those choices based on what we instinctively know we need to experience.
Right. Absolutely.
Once we get that experience and get an understanding to the level that we feel we need, then we move on.
Right. But when you went back to the Seth material and you reread it after reading it in the 60s, it's a new read, isn't it? Aren't you getting different layers? Because it's not the same. Yeah.
In the current book that I've been reading, The Nature of the Personal Reality.
Right.
This is timeless material.
Sure.
It doesn't stick like in the 60s or whenever you could come up with a figure. This is timeless.
Yes.
And that's why I'm attracted to it. If it were something that were still focused, like 60s learning, I would have already put the book away.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying because you are different and you have grown and the material hasn't changed, but it has changed through your perception because you have grown so much that it resonates differently, maybe even than it did the first time, because you were new at it. That was your first thing that you wanted to look at. That's all I mean by that. Yeah, I don't mean that
Yeah,
it's not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I see is that this was a book that was later written after the one that I started with.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's at a different level already from back then when I was plugging in.
Right.
In fact, I would parallel it a little bit to the Castaneda level, except that
Wow.
this to me is clearer.
Okay.
Castaneda was clearer of its kind at that time.
Is it Castaneda is more of a story, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You've got to have a sixth sense to really
Sure.
pick up what's going on.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I plugged in.
Sure.
You know, it was okay. I can go there.
Yeah.
There's particular books that I read, they need a different stage of your development.
You're right. Yeah. For me, when we were on Zods and they had all the Wilbur people were doing all the Wilbur stuff. I'm not interested at all, not understanding it all, but I think you had been reading it and you were involved in that, weren't you? Reading a lot of the Ken Wilber.
Which one?
Ken Wilber. Did you read Ken Wilber when we were on Zods? Oh, you didn't? Okay. I thought maybe you were in that group, but it was like a lot of highly scientific stuff. And I'm not able to, not able to.
No. Well, in Dad's, we had a lot of different options.
We did. We did have a lot of options.
There were many different avenues.
Many paths.
Go down.
That's right. That's right.
I was more caught up with answering the surveys of the people coming into ZADS. And so I wasn't as involved with the groups. I was more involved in taking in the new members.
Right. You did a great job doing that. I remember that well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish they had kept that up. But then anyway, that passed. And that was another thing that was good.
Yes.
Just like with the Bagawhan Raheesh group.
Right. Right.
Faded and went his way.
Mm-hmm.
What I brought away from that was that it was appropriate because many people can get stuck in those groups and not journey any further.
That's right. That's the problem. Yeah.
The natural breakdown of any group, it just brings it out into the open more. It gives more people a taste of what it was like, and in a multitude of ways. Yes. Because of all those different experiences.
And he had a lot of negativity surrounding him when he came to Oregon and had that group there with all the fancy cars. I mean, there are a lot of people that didn't like him for that reason, but I've read a lot of his work that must have been talks that he gave. And my favorite one he did was on maturity. It talked about, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you could be an 80-year-old man, and if you're still a horny guy, then you're going to still be that way. You're not going to get out of that. And I thought, wow, he explained it really well, I thought. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I witnessed when I was with the Raheesh group is that he really allowed the people to do whatever they felt they needed to do. He put them in positions and they cut loose. Some of them really did beautiful work and some of them did not do so good.
Right.
But that was their journey. Yeah. So my feeling was that he was guided to allow them to live their journey. That was freedom.
It was.
And the freedom caused the disassembling.
I know. And if
it all had to be.
It did. And if he was not allowing freedom, that would have dissolved and that would have been a different experience. And
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And also from the very beginning, I saw things like, well, how about when he had all of those Rolls Royces? The better part of it, he did not buy. They were, I know personally of psychologists who gave him a Rolls Royce. These are people with their egos, and they want to get connected with this guru,
Sure.
They are given positions as a result of receiving the Rolls Royce, but
Right.
he did not personally buy them.
Okay.
They were, better part of them were gifted. And what I saw is this was a mirror of our own culture focused on materialism.
It is. It is.
And when we can see things from the perspective, well, what does this really mean to all of us at a deeper level?
Right.
And we can look at things from that perspective. We begin to step back from our judgmentalism. We begin to get in touch with real values of humanity. And we begin, our focuses are different. We're not angry. True. We're not supportive of whatever naughtiness is going on.
Right.
And so on. Right. So all of these things, doesn't matter if it's Jonestown or whatever, that for me, it educates me rather than, it educates me in practical aspect of it, seeing that the Rolls Royces are a mirror of our own culture. Well, I began to be less interested in materialism.
Material things, yeah.
I would,
yeah.
People have to work hard, etc.
They do. It reminds me, my son went to spend some time down in Mexico and also in Chile, and he embedded in a family, excuse me, sorry. And he came back from that experience feeling as though materialism was not something that he wanted to continue in his life, but he was living in that, and he could see the poverty, see the way things were. And that was a huge life lesson for my son, who didn't intentionally, go there to see that, he was going to school. Yeah. But we get lessons all the time.
Yeah. Well, I like the particular avenue that shows me we're already planning deep within ourselves. We don't know it at the conscious level. We're already planning deep within ourselves our journey, the next step. And then the thought comes up to us, oh, I thought of this, I'll do it. But it's been a cooking already.
Right.
It knows that the next step is needed.
Right. And it reveals itself as long as you remain open. It finds its way to you in very synchronistic ways, I guess. That
there are so many messengers, the divine messengers of this or that filter into human form, a book, an event, music, whatever, everything, messengers. So I just refer to that as the divine lessons, whatever it all is, whatever it is. There's always something there. And if I have the guts or the ability to step back and take it from that point, rather than put myself out there, judging everything. Right. But I can step back from that, step back from expectations, assumptions, all of that.
Yeah.
And just let it be and just see, okay, what's here? What's here for me to learn?
Right. So you've learned those lessons embedded in society and the chains of society. I wonder, it makes sense to me sometimes why these monks and cloister, because, or whatever they do, they try to stay away from all those other things, but the rest of us don't get that. We have to embed, we have to live in a society that isn't always the same. And that's not always easy.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter at what level our thinking is.
Right.
Now, when I was living in San Francisco, now this brings up racist attitudes and beliefs that I'm going to talk about. So be aware, I try hard not to be a racist, but I'm going to tell what I experienced.
Okay.
I lived in Sufi Sam's house. Sufi Sam. We were near Presidio Park, and right across, we were on one side of the park, right on the other side of the park was the housing development simply for Black people. So I would go across the park and catch the bus to go down into town. So I'm standing right by all of this housing area. Police car rolled up one day, just all speedy, stopped quickly. The woman got out, came around. She says, "You shouldn't be standing here. This is not a safe place for you."
Mhm.
But I said, "I'm okay. I live here. I'm okay. Goodbye."
Right. Yeah.
So then I felt my body, and I felt very clear. Peggy, you're going to walk through the projects. You're going to walk straight through downtown. Forget the bus. Just do this, just because of that incident.
Sure. You
And
have
I
to prove
did.
to yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
And I did. And I felt
Uh-huh.
absolutely comfortable.
Sure.
I'm not afraid of Black people. I love a lot of them.
Yeah.
And right through the projects. And I thought, this has got to stop. How
does.
do we ever make this stop? So there I was, encouraged by a police officer to get out of the neighborhood that I was actually safe in.
Right. Because you hadn't thought of
it.
it as an unsafe place.
Exactly.
Until this woman came and told you it was, but that was her perception and it wasn't your perception. That's
It's her
fascinating.
perception through her training as a
Her
police officer.
training. Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
so that training goes on and on and on. And that's part of our spiritual awakening and part of our development is we have got to open up that door, walk right through it, right through the projects, hang out with the people.
Right. Yep.
You know, that's what we do.
We do.
That's part of the training.
It's part of our training. You're absolutely right. We're shining a light on any place that we live for sure. And that's just being a light worker. And you know, Peggy, I grew up a little bit after you did because I'm a little younger, but our lives were so different and the world was so different at that time. And I was thinking as time went on that it was getting better because we weren't seeing this as much and we weren't seeing this. I mean, we had random stuff happen, like Rodney King and things like that. But it wasn't this, maybe I was blind to it. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't see it because I wasn't looking. I don't know. But I really thought we were doing better until recently, until 2016. And everybody at that time was mocked and treated poorly by the candidate for president that, that was out there. It was making it okay to be racist or,
Well, it's kind of interesting to me because I've seen how I'm trying to choose the right word. I don't think there's a right word. I've seen for many decades the wrong that is happening. I know in a way that you have seen things along the way. But I've seen many things along the way. In the 50s, when I was living in Cocoa Beach, Florida, I would be walking on a sidewalk, and if a Black person came towards me, they stepped down off the sidewalk into the gutter and walk. That's in the 50s. And I had enough awareness then to feel that was wrong. Why did they have to do that?
Why did they have to do that? Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think that I might have been about 16 or 17 at that time. And so I've always had, I can say this, I've always had this awareness that a lot that has just been accepted has been wrong, absolutely wrong. Yep. And we've never done anything about it.
Right.
We also didn't have the communication facilities then that we have now.
Right. True.
Had by 2016 and so on, but by 2007 and 06, etc. So that we could communicate these things and say, I don't agree with that.
Right.
But back then, you didn't talk about it. We had Leave It to Beaver programs where everybody spoke really nicely to one another.
Right. Yeah.
It was a lie. It was a mask.
It was a lie.
We really were.
Absolutely.
And so people are programmed at that time to be more peaceful. They're programmed to shut up.
Right. Right.
Well, I don't know how many books were out at that time. Silence, title, one way or another, silence. I'm not remembering the names of the authors at that time, but there were several. Tilly Olson is one of them.
Okay. Stand Here Ironing, that one? Which she wrote a story, I Stand Here Ironing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
See
yeah.
that one? Okay. But I know I'm pretty sure she's the one that wrote Silences. But in any case, that was the prevailing energy,
sure,
consciousness at that time. So that might have felt more peaceful because the lid was on it.
But it's all.
But it was cooking.
Well, and then we had McCarthy. We had the McCarthyism with the communism thing. We, in the middle of the 50s, and so that, I mean, it's some kind of racism or bias, prejudice against anybody that is the other. Oh yeah.
Way back then.
Yeah.
Because we had it in the 40s.
Sure.
With the Japanese being placed in concentration camps.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
So we've always had it, but we haven't always had everyone talking about it.
Right. It's in our face 24 hours a day, really. If you go turn on CNN or you watch, or YouTube or whatever. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right.
So it's been there for a long time, and maybe we're doing something about it now. Only a little bit, really. Mm-hmm. How much can we do? Because we fall back onto the same picture. I've got to keep my job. I've got to work. I don't have the time and energy to get involved in that. Right. And so especially the middle years and younger people, that's where their minds are.
Sure.
I'm thrilled and surprised when I see more of them coming out, though, being more politically strong.
They are. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Politics is not where I'm at, though.
I know. I don't care for it, but we were made to be involved in it, if you know what I mean. It was everywhere. It was every day. You couldn't have a chance to get away from it, and that, I think, bothered me the most. It was like it was pressure, pressure. And after the inauguration, in January, a collective sigh. Actually had it when he won, but then there was still crap going on. So yeah, I understand. But politics is awful. Politics is
all that was going on in the past couple of years, bickering back and forth. I was back here watching. I wasn't in it.
Right.
Already been through enough of this stuff.
Right, you have.
And I even had to ask myself, Peggy, do you not care? I care. Right. But you're so quiet.
Yep.
I'm more neutral now. I see
pick your battles,
very
right?
Different point of view.
Sure.
That all of this has to happen. Right. I can remember in the 90s, I believe that was the decade when the middle management from a lot of places was cut out.
Yes.
And then the housing went down and people started losing their homes.
Correct.
Just little things, big things to the people it was happening to, but little things in our commentary, it's saying we're having a breakdown and we're going to get into it pretty good. Well, it's something that we in the spiritual training experience were already talking about.
Right.
We're already saying it's going to happen before it was happening. Mm-hmm. Well, the way SETH talks is if you're talking about it, you've already been thinking about it way down in.
Right, right.
So it's already been cooking. So then you speak about it and then it manifests.
Correct. That's why we have to be so careful. We have to be careful of what we want or what we want to manifest.
We do.
Words are so, Words are so important.
His other book is, oh my goodness, what is that one? Just a minute.
Okay.
The individual and the nature of mass events.
Ooh.
The individual and the nature of mass events.
Okay.
Now that's very good, very, very good.
Okay.
Although the nature of personal reality
is good too.
is like a setup to go into this one.
Okay. I'll have to check these out.
The more people who think commonly about something, the more it's going to manifest.
Correct. Yes,
It's
I agree.
just very simple.
Yep.
And so that's the whole, we've had our documentation of a large group of people meditating for several days or several evenings. And in that particular area, crime slows down.
Right. Yep.
So if we could just get as much information going like we do when we're in politics, yabba, 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 then we could get more positive vibes out.
Right, right. And they're always saying that nobody, you know, people start out okay. A lot of people don't, but a lot of people do start out okay working in politics, but they get corrupted by the system or by the limitations of other people and in that system. And then they end up corrupted. So,
and then we look behind that at what their personal path is all about, right, and what the group path is all about. And it gets larger and larger to the whole idea that we have really wanted to change, and therefore all of this has to come up.
Right.
The worst has to happen so that more people can see it.
Right.
Otherwise, they're blind to it.
Absolutely. Things could be right in front of our face and we're blind to it. It reminds me of the Tower card in the Tarot, where everything has to come down basically before it can be rebuilt, you know, and that shedding has to go on. And that's personal and collective. Yeah.
That goes along with the neurographic drawings. The very first drawing is removing the inner limitations.
Okay, good.
Once you remove, that's all these lines, the neural lines, going all over the place. You've got this picture of all these lines, and I have a couple of cousins who said, my gosh, when are you going to stop drawing all those lines and do some art? That's not the point. This is that we're working with the mind.
Yeah, reminds me of
we create the pretty after we've worked on the garbage.
Right, right. Bringing up the shadow, releasing it, right? All the junk.
Once we have released and truly let go of all of our complaints about the whole world and our life.
Right, right.
Once we let go of those old thought patterns that generate that blackness, once we let go of that, then we can move on to the pretty picture. Sure. And that's what it's really about. But it takes us so long to see that. We want first we want to jump to the pretty picture. Well, why isn't it prettier out there? First, we want to jump to the pretty picture, and we haven't done the work first.
Correct. Yeah. Which is everything, isn't it? I want a Mercedes, but I'm not going to save any money. I should just have one anyway. You know, that kind of thing. You know, it's not the way.
I can't get along with this guy. I'm just going to get a divorce and go on. But then we're going to carry all of that with us that we haven't dealt with before.
Uh-oh. Well, I've got that 3 times. I guess I have some things I need to let go of more. You know, I've been feeling that shadow has asked to be revealed, and I don't find it painful, but I'm still trying to figure out where to go with it. But when you're bringing up the idea of your cousin saying, why are you just drawing all these lines and everything, it reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when the guy is building that thing on the table and it's like a volcano and everybody else is looking at him like and you know, it's part of his process. So we're talking
about Close Encounters.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what it all is.
It is. Yeah.
It's a very close encounter. And it's happening in here first. Correct. It's all happening in the body, in every cell of the body first.
Right.
And when we don't address it, we become ill. And we haven't made that connection yet either.
No, we haven't. You're right. Yep.
And that's an incredibly deep lesson in itself. If we're
Yes.
not paying attention to the body, which is one of the greatest messengers from the divine,
Mhm.
if we're not paying attention to the body and all of those messages that says you really need to deal with this,
Right.
that's
We're
when it
crazy if we
turns.
don't. Sure. Turns on.
Okay, I was just reading about hernias recently in Louise Hay's book. You
Yeah.
Can Heal Yourself.
Yes, I love that book. Yep.
Okay, hernias. That's from busted relationships.
Oh.
You see,
wouldn't-
there's
yes.
all that intuition in the gut telling us.
Correct. Yep.
All that intuition there telling us, and we're not paying attention.
Mhm. Yep.
We don't pay attention long enough, and boom, we've got hernias.
Right.
If we don't pay attention to that and get corrected, then it turns to gangrene. It just goes downhill faster and faster,
Right.
the less we pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
while we're out there watching movies and climbing mountains and everything else, and ignoring the body,
yeah.
it's the biggest messenger of all.
Yeah. I had a person on a live chat we were doing, and she asked the lady that I was interviewing, that she's a medium, and she said, "Why do I always have kidney infections, bladder infections?" And I said, "Who are you pissed off at?" Because that's what Louise Hay says. You know, she does. She's got it nailed really well. She really does.
Mm-hmm.
She all the things that she says, when you go look at it, you can go, okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
well,
good.
it's oftentimes that people can see others, but they can't see
They can
themselves.
see it. True. Oh yeah.
And not
Very
listening for themselves. I
Mhm.
remember in San Diego in the 80s when I went to a group event in someone's home, and there was a channeler there, and she was going to each person around the room to offer them some gift. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, you have a snake curled up at your feet."
Ooh.
That was the summer that the Kundalini came up.
Is that
Okay.
Okay.
And she had
Wow.
totally blown it and misinterpreted. She said, "You need to stop hanging out with that guy you're hanging out with."
Oh, she didn't get it. Okay.
And he was the
Okay.
one that helped kick in the Kundalini, or was a part of it.
Sure.
So, channelers are channelers. They're people too. They're humans going through their journey as well.
Sure.
If they make a mistake, we have to still think about resonating with what goes. The minute she spoke, I knew she was off track, because
Right.
I knew what was going on.
Right. Yeah.
And it played out over time and confirmed my knowing.
It was a material response and not a spiritual response. And I think there are sometimes two different ways, and I see this on YouTube with a lot of people wanting only to ask questions, material questions, and not as much spiritual questions. And it needs to be turned around. You can ask the material questions, but if you don't know what's going on inside of you, or you can't access that wisdom, then you're not going to grow. And this lesson's going to keep coming. So
Exactly. Well, I know at one time, back through the 80s and 90s, and probably influenced by that particular experience, but I didn't have any faith in channelers. I also didn't have a whole lot of faith in myself at that time. So you can see how that's working. It was a protection.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And so consequently, by the time I figured out pretty much who I was, then I could begin to accept certain channelers, certain ones who, oh yeah, okay.
They have to resonate with you. Yeah,
you're resonating. And that's it. Makes all the difference in the world.
It sure does. It sure does. When I started working with this, with putting stuff on YouTube and talking and so on, I really hesitated because I felt as though I don't have a particular gift that I can offer, like a tarot reader, a medium, somebody who does the runes or whatever, um, and or a psychic. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, and I like talking about it and teaching it, and having guests like yourself. But I've gone through this so long. It's been 40 years of wondering what it is it that I'm supposed to do with this knowledge. So at least now I have sort of an outlet for it, and I'm feeling like I'm on the right track. So, but it does come from in here, and how I feel, is very uplifted when I'm able to do stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and not only that, from my perspective, always asking oneself, what am I supposed to be? That's like requesting the next step to come up.
Right, right.
So
Yep.
it's unlocking that door and saying, I'm here, I'm ready. Let's
Right.
do something.
Let's
And
do it.
even if nothing comes up, that's part of the practice.
Sure it is. Yep, I agree with that.
Just slow down, sweetheart, and be patient. It will come forth.
It will. Enjoy the landscape.
Exactly. And it does happen.
It does.
So we carry on. What the heck?
We do. We do. And we continue to learn. That's what pleases me so much in talking with you about the things that you're doing. You haven't stopped learning. It's a continuing process. And that's the way I feel about my own life, that I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue and continue and continue until
all the way,
the last day.
All the way.
Yeah.
Like I was told recently that I was to have the surgery.
Right.
And then when I went in and they did the MRI, and then we met with the doctor, the surgeon, he's showing me the screen. He says, if we go ahead with surgery, that's not the best option. What he's showing me is it looks pretty dangerous. He just has a nicer way of saying it.
Right, right.
And so he's saying, I want you to just go out and live your life and just enjoy it.
Right.
It's like saying you're at the end of your rope, and so you might as well go and have fun.
In a way, but
I'm totally okay with this, because
good. That's good. Good.
It then opens the doors wide open. It's like,
it does.
No.
And you've somehow released the attachment to it. And who knows, Peggy, it may end up going away on its own. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But isn't that interesting that when we hold on to something like that, once we release it, it's like, oh, good. I'm not going to worry about that.
Again, there are no accidents. Again, it's all part of the plan.
It is.
It's teaching us acceptance
Correct.
of what is. It's teaching us that the body can heal itself. We've been caught up in this pharmaceutical, medical snowstorm for enough years now that we have lost the essential teachings of the body.
We have. Yep.
The essential self-healing abilities of the body. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've lost that. Right. And we have to work that's why I'm on the SETH books. It brings all that back.
Sure.
It makes it very, very, very clear that we've allowed ourselves to step off the path to do this or that next thing, which was okay for that period of time to learn what was next. But then we still come back to center and get back on the path and continue the work. Right. There's a lot to pick up that's been set aside. Doesn't matter if we talk about the great gradation of the politics and how it seems to have arisen, when actually the underground is what has been growing as well. Yeah. And the pot had to boil over for us to catch that. Same thing with the care of our own bodies. That's why there's so much cancer, so much this and that. I have 6 sisters, 5 of them had cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's awful.
They're all younger than me.
Wow.
And the first one is 9, 10 years younger than me, and she's already passed throat cancer.
Oh.
Another one is 13 years younger than me. She's already passed. Cancer. Another one has lung cancer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Another one has lower body cancer. Just had major operation.
Oh, goodness.
Another one has had both breasts removed. They all have cancer. Okay.
Yeah.
There's only one of them out of the 6 that I'm aware of that haven't had cancer yet. Her personality is a little bit different too.
Okay. So you can
It
usually
explains a
tell.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, a couple of them, and I have talked a lot about as to the backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
how that may have been brought forward.
Right.
And I had my share of it too.
Sure.
So you look at those things and you say, well, some of them, for some people, may feel it's too late to change.
Yes. Yep. I've heard
Hard
that.
work. It's hard work to change. It's
It
hard
is.
work.
It is.
So you got to be strong.
You do.
That's where that inner ego, the will, comes through
Comes
to
through.
help you get through it.
Right.
Say, we're not going to put up with this. We're going to do some changes.
Right.
Not everybody has that. That's not their path this time around.
This time. That's right. That's right. You know, there's a lot of people that are resentful if you say, well, you know, that's your path or whatever. But I don't ever say it to diminish anybody, you know, because we all make our own choices. We all have created our own life. And some of the things we've created aren't so good, you know.
Yeah.
And unless we make that choice to change, then it's not going to stay. It's going to stay no good, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very helpful to stand back and watch and not judge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a lady say that she has 3 cats and they're older, she said. And she, when she dies, she wants her cats to be euthanized and I guess put with her. I don't really know. And I said, I have 2 thoughts about that because I just lost one of my dogs. I said, the first thought is that, you know, that's your choice. I'm not judging you. If that's what you want to do, you know, you can do that. But the other is that there are sometimes people out there that want older animals and they can linger for a long time. We tend to think we're the only one that can care for that animal when that's just not the case. There's always another angel that comes in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, we don't know. We don't know what we want to do sometimes. And I understand she's probably alone. I don't know enough about her to know, but she's probably alone and she can feel the way she wants to, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell her what to do. So, did you want to bring up any part of the, any more about the Neurographica today? Or shall we plan another day where we just do that? It's up to you.
Well, as a matter of fact,
okay.
I hadn't planned on it.
Okay.
But I'll show you this picture. Okay?
You did that? Wow.
Yes. Yesterday, I had the feeling to tie things together.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about chakras with the colors.
Correct. Yep.
We're talking about the neurons, neurographic
Right.
neurons.
I like that.
But we're also talking about being aware of how we generate our own vibes.
Correct.
by our thoughts.
Sure.
If we're harsh thoughts, we're going to have harsh vibes. If they're gentle and loving thoughts, we're going to have gentle and loving vibes. Every one of us. And so the neurons go on forever.
Sure.
You and I are connecting right now, our neurons, by floating back and forth.
Yep.
I know you've walked into a room or someone has come into a room you're in and you've already felt, before they say a word, you've already felt where they're at.
Some of them are good and some of them not.
It's only when we keep remembering our communication to one another and keep it as gentle as possible. I'm not talking about throttling how we feel.
Right.
Talking about being aware that, okay, I don't want to focus on the hardness that I felt today because of whatever happened before. I want to focus
Right.
on this moment now. And I'm not angry with anyone at this moment right now. And I want to bring up my peace, my calm,
Right. Yep.
and interact in that way.
Yep.
Because every cell in our bodies are always connecting long before we are. They can be on the other side of the world.
Right.
As I have experienced several times when I was in India and things were going on here. Or when I was in New York and my son was in Hollywood and I knew he was in an auto accident and I had no contact with him for months.
Right.
You know these things.
You do.
The cells of our bodies are connecting all the time. That's how we begin to understand a mass event. It's because everybody's cells are connecting and they're resonating.
Yep.
And so for me, it's stay in awareness of these messages that come to us from our body.
Right.
Stay aware of the messages that are coming to us from other people and connect at a most refined way as is possible for us to humanly do so at our particular stages.
Right. Because everybody's on a different stage, right? We don't want to lower our vibration. We want to keep it high, but we also don't want to be too high for those people that are lower because they may feel like we think we're better than them. Do you think? Is it?
Well, my understanding at this point in time is that regardless of where anyone is try our best to be very, very clear to ourselves. We don't need to speak about it, but be very, very clear in our own side what our values are.
Yep.
The energy that goes with those values and be that energy.
Correct. Walk in integrity. Be your authentic self.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we are that energy, that's going to trigger that energy in the other.
Right.
Or help.
Or make it worse, depending on. Yeah.
Wow. So that's as much as I was going to speak about Neurographica today.
That's fine. We've had a great conversation. This is why I like doing this, because there is no agenda per se. We can go from one sort of idea to the other, and it all comes together, and everything that was supposed to be said gets said.
Exactly.
So, yes. So, all right, Peggy. Well,
once again, it's been fun.
Oh, it has. I've had a really wonderful time. Thank you so much once again for being with us, with me, and with my group. All right.